say what you want about Putin, ruthless thug, et cetera. He's not stupid and he's not crazy. He may be the other three things I just said, but he knows what he's doing. And he said he was going to invade Ukraine. He's been warning us since at least kind of since 2008, clearly since 2014, and nobody believed that. You don't assume the other guy's bluffing. Right, maybe in poker for fun, but he's not the kind of guy that you assume is bluffing. He said he was going to invade. Well, recently he said, we'll use nuclear weapons if it comes to that. You're supposed to believe him. I mean, you're not supposed to think that he's crazy. You're not supposed to think that's an empty threat. And yet, so Poland has got these MiGs. They've been refitted. They got new up-to-date avionics, but they're kind of whatever 40-year-old MiG-21s. The idea was, well, could we donate them to Ukraine because Ukraine has pilots who can fly MiGs because they have some themselves, and that would give Ukraine some air power to fend off the Russians, etc. And you're like, wait a second, Poland's a NATO member. So if a NATO member is giving, is the MiG technically a NATO jet? I actually don't know, but I think that distinction would be lost on Putin. So Poland's going to fly the jets to Ukraine. Oh, that's out. I don't think you can tow them across the border. Maybe kind of vulnerable. But then the latest was, Poland's going to fly them to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, kind of give them to the U.S. and let the U.S. figure out how to get them into Ukraine. And oh, by the way, can we have some replacements right away? So Blinken gets into this whole, well, we're considering interagency process to consider how to backfill. It was as we're backfill the Polish Air Force if they give us the MiGs. And then somebody else decided that maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all. But my point is, no MiGs are going to Ukraine. And by the way, that would be a really bad idea. That's goes back to this escalatory thing I was talking about, where you end up with nuclear weapons, nuclear war. But so a bad idea to begin with, but they just turned it into a process. Are they going to Ramstein? Are we going to backfill? Did we have it in the budget? And that's all they do. And so Putin has kind of a clear playing field. That's another great question because first of all, these are the most extreme, serious sanctions, financial sanctions that have ever been imposed. Bear in mind that FDR froze Japanese bank accounts and stopped exports of oil to Japan in August 1941, 4 months before Pearl Harbor. So, and the Pearl Harbor attack had been in the planning earlier than that, but it was kind of going down that road. So wouldn't be the first instance of financial sanctions having kinetic consequences. But some of it's easy. So, although I saw one of our U.S. senators the other day said, we're going to freeze Russia's gold. I'm like, how are you going to freeze it unless you leave it outside in the winter? I mean, it's physical. It's in Moscow. How exactly did you plan to freeze it? But that's one of the reasons I advocate physical gold for nations and individuals, is because it's not a digital asset. You can't hack it or freeze it as you can, as my friend Chrystia Freeland, that are petite neo-fascists in Canada did to the truckers. But I do know her. So here we are slamming Russia with all these sanctions. Probably the Russian economy will contract 20 to 25% over the next 6 months. I think that's a realistic forecast. It will hurt. But what no one in the White House seems to have thought about is the blowback. And that's the first thing you're supposed to think about the second move before you make the first move. These guys just blunder into a move and say, oh, yeah, that didn't work out. But let me give you a concrete example. This has been written about. So the United States cut off semiconductor exports to Russia, period. Not just that, not just as a primary boycott, but as what's called a secondary boycott, which we said to everybody in the world, most pointedly the Chinese, if you make your own semiconductors with our equipment and our technology under license from us, you can't sell that to Russia either. So this isn't just about, Intel can't sell semiconductors to Russia. That's true. Chinese semiconductor manufacturers can't sell semiconductors to Russia if they're made with our equipment, which they are. But basically, all this stuff kind of comes out of the U.S. in the first instance. So, okay, does that hurt? Yeah, that hurts. Avionics, military applications, et cetera. But what people don't realize is that, look around your kitchen or any part of your house, or get in a car. A car is basically a computer on wheels. It has 1,400 semiconductors. So your anti-lock brakes, your engine warning light, your tire pressure, your Sirius radio, whatever you got, it's all semiconductors. 1,400 semiconductors in a typical car. But it's not just that. This is the Internet of Things, right? So your refrigerator, your dishwasher, your washing machine, your coffee maker, you name it, they all have semiconductors. So, but we're going to cut them off from Russia. We'll show them. Well, it turns out that you say, how do you make semiconductors? You basically use a laser to etch at a microscopic level on a wafer, on a silicon wafer. Okay, how do you power the lasers? Well, it turns out there's a processed neon gas. This processed neon gas that powers the lasers that makes the semiconductors, 70% of it comes from a single plant in Odessa, in Ukraine. Now, and Odessa's under siege. So, give it a few days, but that's going to be in Russian hands in a matter of days. The Russian Marines are getting ready for an amphibious assault. They're doing a lot of preparation for that, softening up the target. So Putin's just going to say, okay, we can't have semiconductors. You can't have the neon gas. That's going to shut down the entire global semiconductor industry, which in turn, since that's an input, is going to shut down basically all the manufacturing in the world. Every appliance, every automobile, every aircraft, because these things need to be upgraded continually, even if you have existing ones. So, okay, your move, Biden, and this is what these people don't think about. Ukraine supplies 20% of the grain in the world. It's always been known as the breadbasket of 20% of grain exports, I should say, not counting what's consumed domestically. In a lot of African countries, 50% of their grain. In Lebanon, 100% of their grain comes from Ukraine. You want social unrest in those countries? Bring it on. And then you get into strategic metals and so forth. So 35% of Boeing's aluminum comes from Russia. And for Airbus, it's 50%. Titanium. You think CO2 is a problem? I don't personally, but some people do. You like electronic vehicles, even though they charge them up with electricity from coal-fired plants. How do you make the batteries? What's in the batteries? Lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Guess who produces most of that in the world? Russia. So people are familiar with the supply chain at the retail end. Like you go to the store and the shelves are bare. Oh, where's the hot sauce or the peanut butter? But they're not as familiar with the supply chain on the input end, at the other end, where the stuff goes in, the source materials. And a lot of that, and in many cases, 80, 90, up to 100% of the global supply comes from Russia. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the oxygen supply to the global supply chain. Now, how do you feel? So this is the point, which is, and we can come back to the dollar as the medium of exchange, and the dollar as a global reserve currency. That's my specific area of expertise. But my the book I just finished writing is about the supply chain. So I'm kind of like up to my eyeballs in those, transportation, logistics, and lanes and so forth. But people don't, they say that the supply chain is not a big part of the economy. It is the economy.